Hey everyone, it's Ellis, and this video is a little bit later than I intended for it to be, but that doesn't really matter. We're going to be talking about MSI and how apparently it's going to be played on 35 ping and why this is horrendous and it makes literally no sense whatsoever. Not even taking into account the fact that most of the Chinese players who play on the Korean server already are used to playing in ping, but how this is actually advantageous for LPL and not really advantageous for anyone else. You see a lot of people make the argument about NA solo queue players or even US solo queue players that have to sometimes play on their local servers, and thus they have ping as well. It's totally different because this is putting basically almost all the regions at a disadvantage. A lot of Chinese players play on Korean server. That is their solo queue, in addition to the fact that they play their scrims. And when they end up doing that, they are naturally having ping. The Korean server, as well as the LCK tournament, is played on 7 ping, which is effectively almost LAN. What this tournament's actually aiming to do is make it so that China gets to play in 35 ping, and so does everyone else. But it doesn't make any sense why China is going to be the first country to receive a benefit like this when you have regions like VCS and stuff just having to forfeit their slot altogether and not be able to do anything about it in tournaments or situations like this. The other thing that's really confusing, and even disregarding the fact that now the 35 ping, which is advantageous to the LPL because they play on something similar to this, whereas other regions don't really do this, it doesn't make any sense why they're just not the only ones that are forced to play in ping if this is truly the compromise that everyone's having to go for. One of the things that people don't know is that there is actual negative things to the difference in 7 and 35 ms. This is something like akin to going from 144 hertz to actually sub 60 hertz or something, and anyone who has played on a monitor difference like that would actually get the difference. Just because it's 35 ms and it seems really low, it doesn't actually mean that for pro players, there isn't actually alterations to things that could actually happen in game. Not saying that it's always going to happen, but the possibility for something like that to occur in a tournament like this is really problematic. The thing this ends up doing is Korea is at basically a permanent disadvantage from every other region. While you can make the arguments that other regions, like I mentioned, do play on a solo queue server that is not akin to the 7 or 8 ms, Korea never plays in those conditions. Last time that this ended up happening was the Mid-Season Cup in 2020. I know I was casting it, and in that event, Riot manually made the MS between Korea and China to be different. What this ended up happening, I remember, was that there were a lot of people that complained about the MS difference and how it is unfair because, again, China is more accustomed to playing and practicing in an environment like this. Korea quite literally never practices in an environment like this. So even if you want to make the argument that North America or Europe attending MSI or something have something that's somewhat akin towards playing in this sort of a ping, Korea quite literally just never has it. And it doesn't matter about the 35 ms and it's not like 60 or it's not 70. I'm almost of the school of thought that if you really think it's not that bad, then you should just be the one willing to play in a higher ms anyway. And obviously that's not going to be the case because people who play at a professional level know that there is still a difference that a pro player can discern. Not even a pro player, but anyone who plays the game at a remotely high level would be able to log on to two different IDs, one at 35 ms and one at 7 ms, and you would be able to feel the difference. What I'm going to be showing you on screen here is actually the physical, tangible evidence of how a champion is going to interact with a click. You're going to be able to see Ezreal actually respond differently on two different MSs. This is just a very small example of what this exact MS difference is actually able to do. Now, this is just something as small as a click. Now, when we're talking about champion combos or other champion interactions, there have been interviews and statements made in the last decade or so where players have actually said that champions felt entirely different to do when it came to animations and just certain cancels that you could do. And it felt very weird having to almost unlearn the muscle memory for it when you're not playing on a ping that you're used to. We all make memes about how certain plays are only possible in Korean solo queue by some of the boot campers that come here because they're able to react to some of the things that are happening. Some of the comments are saying that, well, if you make LPL forfeit their spot, it's not really a tournament. I agree, but I don't think that it's fair to actually give a full-on disadvantage to certain regions like LCK. I think there is no logical way to defend the fact that in every single way, LCK is at a disadvantage. There's literally no way to argue this because there is no environment where Korea ever plays in a situation like this, while China, unfortunately, does play in situations like this because a lot of their players choose to play on the Korean server. One of the arguments that I have seen is that it's fine because enough notice has been given to some of the teams, so now they can manually just start practicing on 35 ping. Yeah. Guy in comments, guy in chat, guy on Twitter, guy on Reddit, guy on Inven, guy on DC Inside. Listen, it doesn't matter if you get to practice on it for 1 or 2 weeks before the tournament. That doesn't change the fact that you never practice on this. You're never used to it. Whereas China is, and so are some of the other regions that are attending. Some of them are used to playing somewhere within this realm. And so that is the natural disadvantage that LCK has going into the tournament. And it literally makes no sense why that has to be the case. Anyway, without really going into a lot more of the comments and a lot more of the people that are just crying out about it that have obviously never had to experience a situation like this and have never played games at a high enough level to where something like this could end up mattering, you'd be able to see stuff like this sort of like in fighting games and whatnot where players complain about very similar differences and nuances. And really, all that you really need to do is see the difference here on this one visual and now imagine it for combo sequences, team fights, or something else, and really that's it. Anyway, that is pretty much it to conclude the video, and yeah, not a whole lot makes sense. I really do hope that Riot actually would come out and say how they're actually manually setting in the 35 MS, because there's a lot of different ways that it can be gone about, and depending on how those ways are being gone about, there's actually different instances of game problems that could end up occurring with rollback and other types of stuff. I think that there's a very, very small chance that they would end up going down the rollback route, but if that is actually in the game for MSI, I think that that is going to be a really scary thing. So for people that don't know what rollback is, basically what will end up happening is one team server, one player will tell the server what time it is, the second player will tell the server what time it is, and depending on which action happened first on which player's version, the server will roll it back and go with that player's action. And this can lead to skill shots landing that didn't land on the screen, or it can lead to a lot of other WTF moments inside of the game that don't make any sense to everyone else who's on the not accepted server. Anyways, that's pretty much all that I can really comment on the topic. I think that, again, all the people that say that it doesn't matter, all you have to do is watch the Ezreal clicking and just let your mind wander on what other type of possibilities could exist in a high-tension team fight or just anything, right? Smiting is another really good example. What happens now in Baron smites, Dragon smites? You can just let your mind wander, and after so many games and stuff at that ping, it's, you know, it just does not feel good at all.